finally, the moment that you've all been waiting for, and that is the windshield wiper reservoir installation. Yes, I've gotten a lot of comments about the wiper reservoir. Where does it go? How do you install it? What hardware do you need? Let me show you. First, let's do the oil filter housing. This is the housing. I got the mating side over here. This is where the oil lines go out to the cooler. I have all new parts, gaskets, oil pressure switch, and hardware, and that's all gonna get installed right in here. So I gotta remove these bolts, I gotta replace the hardware, replace the gaskets, and get this thing up to snuff. So let's do that. Alright, so now let's do the intake manifold. That includes the manifold, the throttle body, the connections, especially to the rear turbo, all the electrical connections, and vacuum hoses. Now that the intake manifold is complete, installed, secure, as many of the vacuum lines and electrical hookups as I can get installed, we're good there. Now before I go forward and install the rest of the intake manifold, I want to do the heater hose, I want to do the AC lines, I want to do the engine ground, and I want to make sure that the HVAC line goes in as well, and these things are kind of hooked up as well, so I got to try getting all that installed. This guy's going to end up hanging over that and kind of covering it. So I do have a lot more engine bay work to do, including coolant reservoir, washer, and all that stuff. That's kind of all like pretty stuff, and that's not absolutely necessary right now. But I am understanding the electrical part of the engine, and I want to do the electronics next. I know you guys are probably dying to find out about the wiring and how I install the wiring into the DME here and into the rest of the car. So a lot of that needs to be done as well. Don't worry, I'm gonna feed you baby birds. But for now, we need to do some of the simple stuff, the low-hanging fruit, and we gotta get that done. Now that that's done, well, we can get the car in the air. Let's do the Fender Liners, and then we'll bring the car back down and do the shift boot. We have a couple of things we need to do to the shifter. First, this is the E36 M30 rubber boot. It's got a really nice grommeted edge inside of here that allows you to kind of get it into the groove of the sheet metal to make a really good seal to prevent any type of air or heat from coming up back up, sound deadening as well. So we got to install this. The problem is that this is not designed to fit over the E30, the E92 shifter rod. So we're going to need to cut around here at the right diameter so that this slips over, and maybe we will tape it or put a zip tie on it. But this is stretchy material, so I'm not really too worried about getting this in and down far enough. That's the first thing we need to do. And then the second thing we need to do is, this is the shift boot that we got. And this is our shift knob from the E92 6-speed. So we got our 6-speed shift knob, and that's going to end up sitting right on top. But because the shift knob on the E92 is integrated into the boot, I had to cut that boot because that boot had a frame that didn't fit. This is the E36 frame that does fit. So what we need to do is we need to trim this off, trim the boot, and kind of make it fit so we can get rid of this little white stripe here that I've exposed as a result of cutting. So we'll do those two things, and then this shifter should fit really nicely, and we can start putting the interior together in a later episode. What I've decided to do with the shift boot and the knob is to actually, instead of trimming this off, I decided to hide it. I opened up the shift boot a little bit, and the shift knob is going to go inside of here, kind of like that. And I'm just going to put a couple dabs of glue there so that it holds it in place. That makes this one continuous big piece, and then you can easily put it on, and I think it should actually fit pretty well. Let's touch up and give you a sneak preview into how I plan to describe to you the wiring of the E92 N54 swap. We're going to talk about accelerator pedal wiring. This is the harness that I've extracted from the E92. It's a 6-pin harness. It's got 6 wires. There are 2 potentiometers. I've described this earlier in the previous pedal assembly video. Electronic pedal, which is actually just 2 potentiometers that rotate as you press the pedal in. And for the accelerator pedal, there are 6 wires, 2 potentiometers. Each of those 2 potentiometers has a power, a ground, and a signal. I've determined that I'm going to need about 6 feet of wiring. I'm going to be using a 22 gauge wire to connect these wires to the X6001 connector. I know the pinouts. I'll describe the pinouts here. I'll show you how I do it, how I route it from the accelerator pedal over the transmission tunnel and over to the DME for wiring later. But you have to be very careful to label all your wires, and I'll do that as well. I got my pair of grounds. I got my pair of powers. I have my signal for channel 1, signal for channel 2. I have my labels, my existing harness that plugs right into the pedal, and I have my pinouts. So now it's just a matter of putting it together and installing it onto the pedal, fishing it through the firewall into the DME area so that I can wire it up to the DME later. These are the DME pins. This is pretty ubiquitous for most X6001 connectors, and that's really all that you need. This is the pinouts for the, I forgot what the connector is called, but these are the wire colors, so at least you know. I don't need to know the pinouts, I just need to know the colors for all the wires and what they are, ground, power, or signal. So for the soldering exercise, and I am going to solder, I am not going to do a crimp. I could do crimp or solder, but there's always been a debate as to, resistance drop, long life, durability, reliability type concerns. I'm actually going to solder these. I'm going to strip each of the 6 wires first, then I'm going to use a paste. But before I put the wires together, you put the heat shrink. I have 2 for power, 2 for ground, and 1 for each of the signals. And then you use a solder. I am going to be using a 6040 lead-based solder, but you can also go solder-free if you lead-free if you'd like. And then I'm going to be using a heat shrinking heat gun for shrinking that heat sleeve. And so I got to strip all the wire, and then I got to start soldering, and then label the wires with my pre-made labels that I've got here. I have ground signal support for each of the 2 channels, and then I should be done, snake the wires through, and I am good to go. Now that I got these wires all labeled, and you always want to label them before you put your split loom on, because once the split loom is on, you won't be able to know unless you do a continuity test, which is usually pretty easy, but even after it's installed in the car, it'll be even more difficult to do the continuity test. So label them before you loom them. Now I gotta straighten out this rat's nest of wires. So using the split loom, I learned a little trick in the biz. That's what we call it, the biz. So to prevent the split loom from sliding for shorter looms, this is a pretty long one, as you can see, so we really don't have that problem, but it's really good practice to do this anytime you use a split loom, is to peel back a little bit, right? Then you use a piece of electrical tape, and you kind of just wrap it around the wires themselves, just a couple of times. Try not to touch the outside of the tape, because that's essentially where you're going to end up wrapping on itself anyway. And then you put the loom back on. See if I can do this with 2 hands with the camera the way it is. Just like that, right? So now you have your tape kind of sticking out of the loom. You've already got your wire taped up, and then you just take this and you just wrap it around just a couple times, right? Now what you've done is you've attached the loom to the wire, and it doesn't slide anymore. And you can do that every foot or 2 feet or whatever, but like I said, for a longer loom, you kind of want to just do it once or twice. So let's do the other one real quick. So I've got my accelerator pedal down here. Can't really see it from this angle. I've got my harness right here. I've got to wire the harness across the transmission tunnel, over and up into where the DME is. So let's do that real quick. I found a place where I can snake this wire through. As you can see, I had taped the wires up to make it so that nothing frays, or everything seems will stay intact. And I'll just snake it through the transmission tunnel and through the firewall. As you can tell from the beginning of the video, I didn't install everything that I set out to in this video, and the reason is because there are things that should have been installed that couldn't have been yet, so the order changed, priorities changed. But in the next video, we're going to be doing more technical installation with the intercooler, the radiator core support, the power steering stuff, and we're also going to be doing engine coverings, and we're going to paint some of that stuff to make it look nice. We're going to be doing wire labeling on the E36 body harness stuff. So we're going to be making a lot of headway in the next video, and I'm really looking forward to it. Guys, if you liked the video, please subscribe, like, comment, tell your friends, let other people on the forums know about what I'm doing. Hopefully this has become educational for you and you learned something new out of what I've done today. I appreciate all of your support. Stick around for the rest of the year as we go through some more interesting projects. E31, S85, we're doing some E30 stuff, maybe even some body work on the E21. We'll see. Thanks a lot, guys, and stick around, huh? Later.